Hey everybody, Seth and Ryan Cahill here from Set Up to Fail podcast. This is episode 1 of hopefully many that will dive into why we believe current go-to-market teams are set up to fail. We're going to talk through some of our experiences and also just talk through a current state and what we're seeing in a very real and honest way. We're not going to pretend like we have every answer, but we're going to kind of wrestle with some of the topics and make sure that as you listen to this, you can have kind of an informed opinion on some of the different things behind the scenes that you might not be seeing. Ryan, do you want to just give some more context into why we were talking through actually doing a podcast together on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit that we've had of both operating and working in a consulting capacity for a long time is you get to see a lot of examples of go-to-market. You get to experience a lot of different flavors of how companies operate, and you get to see a lot of examples. And so when you have that at a large scale, you get to identify kind of how different people react to different circumstances. And I think many of the things that we had seen in the past when the market was strong, that were not what were perceived as mission critical problems in a declining market like we have today become mission critical problems. And so the thought process that we had is if we can help you identify some of the things that may be real issues that have led to in some cases catastrophic problems, if we can help you identify those and maybe more importantly help you diagnose them and resolve them, then we can help people navigate what we are in today, which is a down market in a difficult time. And so I think we wanted to approach that as real and honestly as we could, but also give you a practical opportunity to listen and hear that in some cases, just to know that you're not the only one going through it. And in other cases, to walk away with some tangible things that you can take back to your business and your role that we believe can help.
Yeah. So the way we're going to do this, and you'll see this kind of through each episode, is we're going to give generally 2 to 3 topics. We're going to break it down through ideally 10-minute segments. Ryan kind of battles sometimes, so it might go a little bit longer than that. We're going to keep it to ideally, and we'll put a timer on for kind of a core topic. For the first episode, we felt like it was appropriate to really just talk for topic number 1 around just the state of go-to-market. Depending on how long that conversation goes, we'll see if it actually takes up 10 minutes or not. We also want to dive into the majority of businesses and what they're feeling today around the stagnation of new business. Now, there are some companies that are seeing success there, especially in North America. There are majority, though, from what I'm hearing from friends and other operators, is there's a real problem there. And they've basically hit a wall and they don't know what to do. So we'll kind of talk through some of those things that we're hearing ourselves. But state of go-to-market today, if you look at LinkedIn, there's the AI influencers that are basically talking nonsense and their projections around you have to do this or you're 7 years behind. Those people are a dime a dozen. There's the other people who, let's call it, are masquerading of, I have these 1,000 years of experience, and let me tell you about all these different things that I've helped solve for companies. And if you just like and subscribe, I'll give you all the answers. There's so much of that flooding LinkedIn to where Ryan and I talk about it kind of on a daily basis, where we basically just want to get off of LinkedIn because it's so bad and so unproductive. And everybody has this drastic answer. You have to do this, you have to do that. When in reality, I think we all know there's a happy medium to all of this. Should you be focusing on what your team can do to leverage AI? Should you personally? Absolutely. And as you think about other areas of how to grow new business of, hey, here's all these cold call scripts. I don't know you, I see all these cold call scripts now as if that's the perfect way to teach people. Yeah. It drives me crazy. Anyhow, so let's dive into, we'll put 10 minutes on the clock. Let's dive into the state of go-to-market. In particular, maybe give your opinion, Ryan, on all these AI experts who claim to be God's gift to go to market.
I think my biggest pet peeve with the whole thing is I think for most organizations, go to market is reasonably sophisticated. I think if you're
reasonably is an understatement, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're post 10 million or so in recurring revenue, you've got a pretty sophisticated go-to-market, and in many cases, an overly sophisticated go-to-market. Yeah. I think it's insulting to professionals to masquerade as if there's this simplified one-stop shop resolution to all your go-to-market issues. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, to not take into account the fact of like where maturity you are as an organization, what maturity you are in a product, what industry you're facing. I mean, look at retail right now with all the tariffs. Retail is a ghost town. So are you telling me that your magic wand is going to work in retail when their tariffs just went up by 20 or 30 or 40%? It's just nonsense. So my frustration is I think they massively oversimplify what is a very complex problem. So first and foremost, I think it's disrespectful to the professionals to think that like there's some magic switch to that. I think the other thing that is a key component to this is, by and large, and I wouldn't say across the board, but I would bet you it's north of 75%. The go-to-market structure and strategy at your business is broken. How broken varies.
Why? Because it's I don't think, unless you've seen a lot of the movie multiple times, and we've seen quite a bit of it. Again, not to say that we're experts in everything, but we have seen a lot of go-to-market motions. There's this mindset of what transpired probably 10 years ago of how people started to think through the go-to-market structures and the different revenue streams. This PLG has started to come into play a little bit more. Most businesses are unbelievably immature there. Why is that a problem now? What are you actually getting at with that? Because I
think the reality is
the pivot that's happened and is going to continue to happen.
It's not a problem now. It's been a problem for a while. You just got away with it. I think most companies have had really bad go-to-markets for years, but you got away with it by overspending with your funding. You got away with it by selling to each other, where tech was selling tech and everyone's just buying each other's products. I think you got away with it with expanding markets and growth, and people willing to pay.
When you say got away with it, like break that down for people so that they don't.
It was bad to begin with. It was bad. It was too expensive. It was inefficient. It was ineffective.
Okay.
But because the rising tide just kept going, you got away with being not good. So when you take that money away, when you take that momentum away, and all of a sudden you have to actually make money and go to market, and you don't have the money to just keep spending and spending to acquire customers, all of a sudden a limited budget produces a minimal outcome, and it's a problem. And so it's always been a problem for the last number of years. Just people got to spend their way out of the problem. You can't spend your way out of the problem.
Well, it wasn't a problem because of the ecosystem, though, because the game that VCs and PEs were allowing companies to operate under was this premise that if you spend, you grow. Yeah. And for most companies, that was true. If you spent and you hired a bunch of sales reps and you spent a bunch of money on marketing, generally you could grow, even though your CAC was way out of order. But the new business, everybody cares about profitability now. Yeah. And the new fun term that everybody throws around is profitable, efficient growth. Yeah. Which is slightly the biggest oxymoron of all time. But,
I think the only profitable, efficient growth that I'm aware of are truly product-centric PLG. Those are the only people that are profitable and efficient. Outbound go-to-market, there's nothing profitable or efficient about it right now. I don't care who you are. You could be the best in the world, and I've seen those people. We've worked with them. They're getting crushed right now. So it's not, you're not going to muscle your way out of a problem. I think, what you just described is an important difference. The difference is you're playing a different game now. The game you're playing is push growth as hard as you possibly can just to get that next inflection of cash, and then we're just going to do it again. It was, in essence, a game. Well, now that money goes away and you actually have to operate your business, you've never had to do that. The majority of SaaS companies have never had to operate profitably, ever.
Well, that wasn't the game that the market was playing.
And it's no knock on them that you are playing the game that was playing at the time. Yep. Well, this is a new game, and the old processes, the old tactics, and the old strategies just don't work, as evidenced by, look at the SaaS industry. I mean, you're talking about people that are, going from 30, 40% growth down to 9. That's the delta. And so now you have this massive influx in strain on the ecosystem to go, whoa, this is not working. We spent $1 and we got back 20 cents. Like,
Yeah.
This dog doesn't hunt.
Well, part of it too is, and this is no knock for anybody that's worked for Salesforce or has been at Oracle for a long time. There was a lot of obviously extremely sharp people that were there, and they're still are there. However, there's this perception in the market, and there's a lot of leaders in place that have been at these type of companies for 20, 30 years that are the ones who are advising the strategy. Now, it's not to say they can't advise the strategy. It's to say that too many organizations are reliant on these people who don't know how to handle what's next because they're still operating on this playbook and strategies that they did 10, 15 years ago that at that time
In
worked.
a completely different circumstance. That's the other thing that I think is really dangerous, and you see this all over LinkedIn. Well, when I was there with the first $10,000 and we grew it to $1 billion. No, you didn't. The organization grew to $1 billion, and it grew to $1 billion because you might have been the first to market in a massive ecosystem. There may have been 17 other factors that come into play for that. So it's not, there's no such thing as a generic rise to $1 billion status. There are specific nuances to it. You're not going to be the next NVIDIA. You're not going to be the next, OpenAI. Like, you're not going to be those things. And 99% of them, that's why they're the outliers. So for the rest of people, you've got a decent product. You're probably competing with 3 to 4 to 5 other key competitors. You're in a market that isn't ever expanding, that is constrained, and you've got to go out compete. I don't think there's a lot of people that are prepared for that, as evidenced by what you see right now. They're not used to fighting. They're not used to competing. They're not used to parity. They're not used to someone going, this kind of feels like a, commodity. It's like, you're 10% better. Yeah. Well, that's in the old days, that happened a lot. And you had to outsell someone. You had to outcompete. You had to outwork. That's the market that we live in today. And I'm not going to say that you need to make 700 dials by 6 a.m. and you do your cold plunge. I'm not talking about that. I'm actually saying that you have to work harder now. You have to be better. And I think a lot of people are getting shaken by that, where it's like, well, yeah, but I just used to do my cadences a day and I would send my 20 emails. Okay, well, now you might have to do twice that, 3 times that, 4 times that for the same performance.
Yeah, so you're touching on a couple of things that we've brought up in other places that are important pieces as people think about, like, anyone who listens to this, they're going through, okay, well, what do I do for my career? Like, if this is going to get continually harder and get continually more competitive, which, again, not to be one of those people who says, oh, I know the future. The reality is probably going to get extremely competitive because we know how VCs operate. We know how PE-backed companies operate. They aren't looking to have a bunch of headcount. They're trying to be as efficient as possible with the least amount of people. And what that in theory means is less jobs. And so for those jobs, yes, you are going to have to be much more skilled and understanding of how you can do that. Who knows when that's going to happen, if that's a year, if that's 5 years, but you can damn sure bet that people are going to be pushing that direction because VCs aren't worried about your job. They're worried about making money. Same with PE firms. So if you work for any of those type of companies, you should have a concern about the reality of what's coming to you.
We work for a public company like Microsoft. They just laid off 6,000 people.
Right.
Like
and bigger companies will continue to do that as well. So the piece that you brought up that's interesting is kind of the shift in mentality of, okay, now I have to do more to be productive and to hit my quota, whether you're a senior leader or you're a rep.
Yeah.
I've sensed this from a lot of friends that I've talked to that are still selling and that, are struggling with this. It's just the motivation to continue to fight. And I think the last 3 years in tech has been brutal for everybody involved.
Yeah.
It's been a really tough environment. It's been a really tough environment mentally to try to buy in. How do you go through that? Like if you're a senior leader and your reps aren't motivated, and I think that's the majority of reps today, they're not really motivated because they're realizing I have to put in potentially 2-3 times the work to make maybe half the money I was making before during that certain period.
Yeah.
I think that's a really tough thing for people to deal with. It's just the motivation of the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the hardest things about it is just the acceptance of it.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at for anyone that has a friend or family that worked in the real estate business, ask them about 2008. 2009. People were printing money in real estate, 2004 and 5. You were doing the same job, working way harder, making a tenth the money you were making. I went through that as a commodities broker. People went through that in the financial crisis. This is a downturn in tech. I don't care what you want to call it, recession, not recession. It doesn't matter. It's bad. It's down, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And
hard.
it's not turning around tomorrow.
No, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
It's absolutely going to get worse. There are going to be less companies. There are going to be less jobs. There'll be less opportunity. There'll be less earning potential. Yeah. It's hard. It doesn't mean you quit on it, but I think fighting reality is just delusion. So I think accepting the fact that, there is no easy money, and let's face it, for a period of time, it was kind of some easy money. Yeah, you got to hustle now. And so for the people that want to stick it out, I think you really have to up level your skills and actually get to where you are predictable in performance. And I think what we've taught people for many years is to be a really good sales rep, you have to think like a business owner, and you need to audit yourself in advance of any management. You need to go, am I working a deal I can actually win? And if the answer is no, stop. I think that's part of the problem that I think a lot of people are facing right now is they're going through the motions because they're told to or because they think they should, even though they know it's not going to work.
The perception of fear there, I think, for most reps, like in particular pipeline, is, hey, if I have no pipeline, I'm the first in the chopping block, which at some organizations you very well might be. I think the reality is, though, that if you continue to operate underneath that, you can masquerade and, do some light touches on those accounts that aren't going to do anything. But again, it's still the prioritization of focus where I've really very rarely ever met a sales leader that was mad at a rep that had no pipeline that was putting in the effort. Because they look at that as part of their accountability as well to make sure that you can be successful. If you're putting in the effort, they're not going to be thrilled if every other quarter you're putting up a goose egg. But they're going to work with you to make sure that you're continually learning and getting the best opportunities. So it is a little bit of a tricky piece for going back to the original point of just.
But you do need a plan, though. I think that the key component is, as an individual, you need a plan that you believe is successful. If you feel like there's no chance to win, you might as well leave and start ramping somewhere else. Like if you can see that like this is a dead end road and you absolutely can't sell for whatever reason under any circumstances and no one at your company is being successful, my recommendation is to move on. Like it doesn't make sense. Now, if there is some success and it's just spotty and it's inconsistent, it's chunky, you need to learn from that. You need to figure that out. And I think that's part of the key recommendation that I think we would both have is in this current circumstance, you have to be a very, very in tune listener to everything, behavior, language, the things that people say. Now, if you work in some of the industrials or whatever, I don't know those markets. You've got to figure out a market that still has a reason to buy, that still has an opportunity, and prove that to yourself and to the company, and then put your time and effort into the things that are working. That's the only thing that's going to, back to your motivation point, that's the only thing that's going to show motivation for yourself and reward the work is that you see some progress. If you're just banging your head against the wall every day, I mean, this is depressing. Like that's not worth
it. Depressing is the right answer. So we touched on this for a second of like go-to-market operators and running the same playbook they did 10 years ago and expecting different results. There is quite a bit of the market that's still doing the traditional outbound motions, that's still doing the traditional playbooks. I think majority of businesses are masquerading this ABM mindset around, orchestrating who we're going after in just a targeted way. I think ABM is a crutch for most businesses and oftentimes is a detriment than a benefit. But as you're thinking through that for, the companies that you're advising from a go-to-market standpoint now and how you're starting to think through those motions, how do you rethink that? Because you can't just rehash everything overnight, right? It's not going to work with your business, especially if you're at any scale. So how do you think through that? Because that's a realistic thing, and there's no silver bullet to it by any means. But how do you think through that logically?
I think you try to compartmentalize it. I think it's dangerous in an environment that's so dynamic and shifting and changing to try to do like holistic visionary adjustments. I think it's better to be more tactical and strategic when things are going like this, because you can get your hands wrapped around something smaller, easier, and faster. You try to approach like, what's our North America strategy? Like, it's just too big, it's too hairy, it's too difficult, and there'll be too much friction for change. And so it's not worth it. So like one thing, like a practical example is we're seeing a lot of companies that LLMs are becoming a huge lead source to the website.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Well, it means that the traditional search providers are going to have less dominance. It means that from an SEO standpoint, maybe you should adjust your budget away from Google and start putting more emphasis on content that specifically is tailored to LLMs. Like, you've got to start listening to what's happening. And if you look at some of the companies that are doing that, I know companies personally where ChatGPT is like their second or third highest referral source to their website.
Yeah. That's
just think of that for a second. Like, your second or third highest, above social, above like all these other things that we say are so important. It's like, yes, they were. And I think that's part of what people struggle with is what we think happening. And I think that's part of the first conversation you should have is our strategy is we think this happens. Now, look at the data. Is that happening? If the answer is no, then you're wrong. And that's okay because things are changing. But it's not okay to go, well, let's just keep doing it.
Right. I think the LLM piece is a big one. Obviously, everybody's heard this in 1,000 podcasts about what it's going to happen, what it's going to do to jobs, how it's going to change digital advertising. We have seen tangible evidence of that will continue to shift. How much it shifts away from Google, how much it shifts away from major search engine, we'll see. But the premise is like, it is going to be a thing. And if, a tangible example, like
it's already objectively.
Who has ChatGPT on their phone? I go to ChatGPT for most things nowadays, even for some searches, because it's more efficient and it's, usually get a better answer. So that'll continue to shift. The other piece to what you mentioned, I think it's a good thing for people to think through is, we've made some mistakes in this in certain, change management exercise we've done in consulting where we tried to change too much too fast. And we realized that, early on in that you can't, even if it's the right decision, if it can't be implemented and used and digested from the field, then it's the wrong decision. It's actually ultimately going to hurt your business. So the piece that we've talked a lot about that I think is kind of summarizing what you're saying is start small, find something where you feel like you can tangibly test and test just that, whatever that is. Don't test 17 different things. Don't go run 55 different plays across your go-to-market. For example, if you feel like you have success in healthcare as a vertical, take a rep, take a manager, take an SDR, take some sort of pod, and go test that out. Put some advertising dollars to it, actually coordinate and orchestrate that. Give that a realistic amount of time, not 2 weeks, not 2 months. Give it a quarter or so, if not longer, and see what kind of tangible results you can get and start to test your way into that model and look at the CAC and look at what you think you actually can go and drive and start to play around with different things. Because otherwise you're going to change too fast and it's going to ruin the business, piss people off, or you're not going to give yourself a real ability to actually try anything because you're doing 17 different things because everybody has an opinion about what they should go and try. That's the biggest problem I think in organizations today is they're trying too much and they don't actually have a strategy on what they're looking to improve.
I fully agree. I think one very important caveat to that. Do not try anything that isn't based on success. This is not the time to try your from scratch thesis. You're wrong. Everyone's wrong. We're wrong, today on things that are based on data. Do not try something from scratch. Try to replicate what has happened. For example, if all of a sudden you're doing business in South America for some reason, okay, how many deals have you done in South America? Oh, okay, how has that trending been the last 2 or 3 quarters? If the trending is up and you're doing, a couple dozen transactions in South America, now try to do more. So the idea is when you're doing these tests, you're not testing something for the first time. You're testing if you can replicate success you've seen. Even if it's small, that's okay. But don't test brand new ideas. That is a fool's errand. You will burn money, you'll burn time, it's not worth it. What you should do is find something that is working that you want to validate can be replicated, then go validate that and what you can do about more of it, making it faster, making it more efficient, etc.
Yeah. Well, we took a lot longer than 10 minutes on the clock. So we're going to,
I think that was more than one topic though.
yeah, we covered a lot in that. So we can go into the stagnation of new business probably for the last, we'll put 5 minutes on the clock and then kind of wrap up there. What's your perspective on the stagnation of new business? I think before I'll preface it of, especially in the US, you can look at reports and say that we're not in a recession. You can spin it every single way. I think the reality is for most people in tech, it's been a recession or a down market for the last basically 2.5 years for the most part, probably more so felt in the last year and a half. With that context, what do you do about a stagnation of new business? Because throwing more at the wall isn't going to make you more productive and or help you sell more. So talk through that, because I think that's a real challenge for everybody from a rep to a CRO to CEO. Is I almost guarantee every board meeting is talking about new business.
I think the only intelligent way to answer that is answer it from the point of view of the person, because I think it's different. So
Okay. Look at that.
If you're a rep, as an example, what you should do is find out where success is happening, what specifically characterizes that success, and I would model yourself off trying to replicate that. So if another rep is having success with companies that look like this, of this size, this industry, this vertical, you should target those companies. Look at the team's success over the last 2 quarters. Who's selling? What product are they selling? Where are they selling it? Who are they selling it to? That should be your model. You should take the input of what is happening successfully and go try to replicate it if you're a rep. If you're a manager, VP, you have to do the same thing, but then you're delegating down the execution strategy. But you need to go, where's my team winning? Where? What are they selling? To whom? Etc. Instruct the team to target those people. Go after those folks. If you're a CRO, it starts to get different. I think many CROs need to have a come to Jesus with their CEO to accept the fact that this is not going to be a good year. And to accept the fact that the team can only produce what it can produce. And when you look at a business, a revenue producing group is like a machine. It prints money, right? I got these people doing these things, and the output of that is signed contracts. We're 5.5 months into the year. Whatever you've produced divided by 5.5 is what you can produce. Predictably. You likely can do whatever run rate you've done for the rest of the year. If that isn't aligned with what your target is, you need to have a conversation about that, because chasing the stars when you're jogging on the planet doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a fool's errand. And what's going to happen is you get people that are demoralized, you get them disenfranchised, you get them disengaged, and you got people phoning it in that are unmotivated, they're not working hard, and your performance is not going to stay flat, it's going to go down. And you're going to have people sitting on FaceTime, taking Zoom meetings, looking at Instagram, doing whatever they're doing. They're not going to produce anything. And they're going to take the hottest job that they think come, October, November for next year, and they're going to go try it somewhere else. So you got to accept and adjust and capitulate to the reality that you're dealing with. I think anyone that fights that, it's a fool's errand, because we're halfway through the year. You've already proven what you can do. It's not going to change.
I think part of it too is, and I think on the leadership side, you need to sit with the team right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of leaders that are very distant with their go-to-market teams, and that they assume that just giving them space is the right answer. That's not the right answer.
Yeah.
And nor is it being a hard ass on them and telling them just to make more dials. You have to show them that there's a smarter way to do things, to what Ryan's mentioning is, and you have to sit with them and look at what's happening with them and educate them on that. That's how you'll get the buy-in to go, hey, we're seeing success here. We're going to continue to go here. When you see these signals that aren't great, we need to have our cackles up really early to go, it doesn't make sense for us to continue to spend time there. Doesn't mean you don't have a conversation with them, but it means that this is not ideally for what's going to make a good sale for us and something where you can be successful in. But you need to sit with your team and digest that with them and empathize with them. Hey, I know it's hard. I know we're going through, a tough market right now. However, it's not okay if we're not trying to get better. Here's how we're going to do that as a group. Too many leaders come down either too hard or too distant and don't just sit with their team and can rationalize with them and sell them on the vision of what we're going to do and be real with them and go, hey, look, we're not successful here. Stop wasting your time. When you hear this, when you hear that, that's a red flag. You need to go validate that and move on. There's not enough leaders doing that today. There's too much of I'm dictating from high, or I'm a hard ass and I'm going through every little thing that you're doing and nitpicking it. And now you get your reps all nervous to even explain anything. They don't want to make any mistakes. And so you have this environment where reps are like, I'm just not going to do it because I'm going to get lashed out if I do anything creative. For example, like presenting a different type of proposal. A lot of people are getting thrashed for that these days, which is not a productive environment for anybody.
But I think one of the key things that you mentioned there is that the people that truly lead through this experience are the ones that have realism integrated into their talk.
Yeah.
If you are outside in the pouring rain and lightning and thunder, and your boss is telling you it's a sunshiny day, you have no trust, you have no respect, you have no confidence, and it's disrespectful at the end of the day, right? Like everyone's intelligent. If you're working in, the broader SaaS ecosystem, you're very bright. You're the top 10% of, the industry. Don't treat your people as if they're stupid, right? And so be real with them and have a candid conversation about, this is not great. It's a tough market, but let's figure out a way that we can, to be as successful as we're capable of being. But the delusionary thing of like, oh, we're going to do it. And, you're at 6% of your number. It's going to fall on deaf ears. It's going to lose all credibility.
It is. It's condescending at the end of the day. It's pertaining to your most cynical people, which are usually your sales reps, because most of them are cynics, are the good ones. You're telling your most cynical people that can objectively look at the business, go, it's perfect outside and we're doing great. Now, that's not to say you need to be negative, and you and I are a little bit maybe more straightforward and look at kind of, again, cynics in some regards. There's a happy medium to that where, again, you can sit in the reality of the scenario and also be positive and encouraging to the team of, we're going to get better, we're going to develop you, we're going to keep you developing your skill sets. That's what you have to lean into these days. I'm going to continue to help you get better at your job and your career. That might mean some success in the short term. It might not, but I'm going to help you get better.
But that's an important thing too, is like, I think, anchoring it into realism, I think is the most critical piece. Secondarily, like sitting with the team, whether it's Zoom meetings, in person, one-on-ones, team calls, whatever it is, getting with people and having the dialogue, not a presentation, a dialogue, a back and forth. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What can we all learn from that? What can we do with it in a collaborative way? Yeah. But the third thing, and I think what you're just describing, but it's important that it's done the right way, is when you talk about a resolution plan, it is not the product. It is not the macro economy. It is not the vision for 2026. It is what you can practically do Monday morning at 9 a.m. If you're spending time saying, well, the new product's going to launch in 2 quarters, it's bullshit. 1, it's probably not going to launch on time. 2, it's probably not going to change the circumstance. And 3, it's not something you can do. I think the biggest mistake you can make as a leader in a tough time is give people false hope about things that they can't actually do anything about. You can be better at your next discovery call. You can be better at account research. You can be better at understanding who's buying now versus who's not buying now. Those are things you can actually do that will actually make a difference. That's what you need to talk about. All the visionary statements of the future, leave it there. Let marketing talk about that nonsense. If you are in go-to-market, you've got to talk about things.
You leave marketing out of this, okay? You don't bring marketing into this. Speaking of that should be
just a quick aside. How often have we heard that the market's tough, and then they tell salespeople, "Well, in 3 quarters we're going to have a new product." Great. What does that do for my quota in June this year? Nothing.
Right. Well,
So
again,
let's talk about that.
yeah, and I think that's the misrepresentation for most executives is they misrepresent their audience for a lot of that communication, whether it's about profitability, whether it's about where we're going for 2026. Majority of sales reps do not care about next year or the years after that. They want to know, how am I going to make money now? And if you're not a leader that's equipping them to understand that, you're at risk of losing that rep if they're good, or potentially you want some healthy attrition there. But I think that's the big thing that we're saying in this, and let's wrap up here. I think we've done over 10 minutes on both these topics. The big pieces we want to, I think, to wrap up that resonate with me kind of throughout the conversation that you and I obviously riff on quite a bit is be real with your team. Stop the fake positivity. You can be positive and also be real at the same time. Encourage your team with realistic steps that they can get done tomorrow. Yeah. Start every single week looking at what is working and what is not with your go-to-market, and truly getting down to the granular details of, if somebody's coming to us and they're saying X, are we successful in that scenario? And the other piece is, we've kind of talked about is, should you start thinking through AI and looking at ways that your team can use it, your organization can use it, your business can use it? Absolutely. Don't freak everybody out about it, though. But those would be, I think, the tangible things you can probably take out of this episode. Ryan, any other closing remarks outside of the fact of just dropping bombs on marketing and leaving them out of strays?
No, I think you nailed the key ones. I would say one of the best uses of AI right now is to help you see things you may not see. Yeah. Have AI look at, your last 20 customers. What's commonality amongst these 20 people? What's commonality amongst these 20 companies? What's commonality about, the nature of their problem? Like, use AI as an asset and as an assistant. I think some of the AI adoption is massively overblown. I think there's still
it's not ready yet by any means. It's not ready. Anybody who knows anything understands that majority of it is not even remotely ready for all these go-to-market orchestration things. Yeah. The technology is not there. The underlayer is not there. It will get there over time, but it's just not there. I'm so sick of seeing LinkedIn people saying that you have to be doing this right now. It's BS.
Well, and I think the other thing is, again, it's one of the topics that we talked about a little bit earlier is, like, I think people are trying to solve this holistic thing that never gets solved that way. You do not build a house with one piece. You build it piece by piece. It's no different in business. You're not going to institute AI holistically. You're going to do it for one use case at a time or one scenario at a time. I think that's the way you fix problems too. You don't go, well, our whole go-to-market is broken. Let's fix our whole go-to-market. No, fix where traffic is coming from to your website. Fix whether this lead is qualified or not qualified. Fix whether this deal is still real or not. Those are things you can tangibly get your hands wrapped around that will make a difference right now. Yeah. And where the ROI of that is like days, not quarters. That's the other thing, is as you look at these things, what can you do next week in May, not 2026? Like, we got to be tactical and a little bit nearsighted for that stuff.
Yeah, I think, speaking of some of our old colleagues at Winning by Design, Jocko just put out some research papers around the different pieces of go-to-market and how AI can prompt to that. I think he's a little bit of forward-looking in most of his stuff around how he's approaching it, but he does do a good job of breaking down by part of the funnel how you can think about using AI, both from a customer-facing and internal. So check out some of that stuff. I think that's pretty helpful. And there is some interesting things around how people are using that on their website, et cetera. But don't stress out about it that it's happening tomorrow. Don't freak out that your business needs to do X, Y, and Z overnight. There's a lot of pressure on this. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. We'll continue to be real with you. As you'll learn, we don't really sugarcoat things here. And we want to make sure that we continue to kind of wrestle with topics together in a very real fashion about what you can think through. So if you have any other topics, please make sure that you comment on the podcast and let us know what else we want to wrestle with. We'll come back with some other episodes and make sure that we kind of continue to wrestle with some topics together. Outside of that, it's been a pleasure. We're all set up to fail. The question is, what are you going to do about it? So for next time, we'll talk to you. Cheers.